In today's tutorial, we'll work the Knit Triangle Shawl by Yarnspirations.com. Welcome back to another Yarnspirations tutorial. I'm your host, Kristen Mangus of Good Knit Kisses. Let's get started. In today's tutorial, you'll need a medium number 4 weight yarn. We're using Bernat Pop in color Full Spectrum, and the sample on the pattern is Paisley Pop. Today we're going to work the Knit Triangle Shawl pattern by Yarnspirations.com. We're using Bernat Pop. This is color Full Spectrum that I'm using in my sample, and the model is wearing color Paisley Pop. Now you're going to want 2 balls. We're going to show how to actually work in that second ball if you need that. We are also working with US size 8 needle, and 5mm is what that is in metric. And then you want a 36-inch cord or longer to hold all your stitches. This will be slowly increasing from tip to tip or point to point in the pattern. And you're also going to want a measuring tape so you get it the right length. You'll want a wide-eyed tapestry needle to weave in your ends, and also at least 1 stitch marker. You'll see why I have 2 here in a minute. And you're going to work the first 13 rows with me. You'll be able to fast forward, pause, and rewind for all of these. So you'll be able to make this entire thing on your own. These 2 rows will get repeated over and over until you get to the right length. We'll go over how to know where to stop, how to bind off or cast off, and how to weave in those tails. So let's get started working the Knit Triangle Shawl. Let me give you some instructions if you are working with us on the loom. The loom is pretty forgiving, especially because this pattern is just knit and increased over time. So you're going to be working alternating knit rows and purl rows. The purl rows are going to be the even row, and we will increase. You can increase knit front and back. You don't have to convert that to purl front and back. That's okay. You're going to want a small gauge or regular gauge loom that's going anywhere from 3/8 from center peg to center peg to, you could do 7/16 or even 1/2 inch, and you're working with the same yarn. So you're just going to increase until you get to the right point. I would get at least 140 pegs, maybe 168. Knitting Board has a 168. Their 28-inch peg loom will work really well for this project. There's also Cindywood looms, and theirs is probably going to be a 1/2 inch gauge that will work for you. You can also do 5/8. Any of those numbers will work. It's a pretty forgiving pattern. All right, so let's get started. To get your Knit Triangle Shawl pattern, click on the link below. Okay, we're going to cast on 2 stitches, and in the long tail cast on for 2 stitches, you don't mean much, just have a little bit longer tail. I wrap my yarn around my finger twice and pull the back loop over the front a little bit, and then 1 more time over the tip, and then that is my slip knot. Make it however you like. I put the tail towards me and the ball yarn behind, tighten that up a little bit, and then we're going to cast on 1. Going to be pretty simple. Just if you've never done it before, you're going to hold these in your hand, spread them out, and where your thumb is, you're going to scoop up from the thumb, go down through where the finger is, and then go down where the thumb is again, and then drop your thumb, and then pull that so where it's a little bit snug. It's loose enough to move around and not too loose to fall off. So that's good. And now we're going to start. So you've already got your 2 casted on. The slip knot was the first, and then the second one was the one we just did. Okay, so be sure and don't work with the tail. You're going to work with the part coming from the ball, and we're going to, the first row, we're actually going to increase immediately. So we're going to knit in the front and back. So what we're going to do is wrap our yarn around our needle. We're going to pull that stitch on through, but before we let this left one drop off, we're going to flip back around to the back of this loop, put our needle through, wrap around, pull that new stitch through, so we have 2 stitches, and we're going to drop this off our left needle. That is increase of knit front and back. Now we're going to knit this last stitch here. So that's row 1. Okay, and that's going to be our right side. Now we're going to go to the second row, which is our wrong side, and we're going to knit 2. Again, in the first beginning rounds, you're going to make sure and don't grab that tail. So we're going to knit 2, that's 1, 2, and the last stitch we're going to increase by knitting front and back. So we're going to go in like a normal knit stitch. Don't pull it off. Go to the back here and put it through that loop and knit that stitch. What it does is it twists it, and we've let that drop off. We've got 4 stitches. Now turn this around. We're on the right side again. and we're going to knit front and back, increasing. So knit front and back. Okay, so we've increased those 2 stitches, and now we're actually going to decrease. I know that sounds funny, we just increased, now we're going to decrease. So we're going to take these 2 stitches here and run our needle right inside, okay, and then knit those stitches together and let that fall off. And now we're going to knit 1. Okay, so we still will have 4. Did you notice it increased on a row? And then now we just continued this same stitch count. Now we're on the wrong side row, or the this is the 4th row here, and we're going to knit to the last stitch, which is called in our pattern, and then we knit front and back of the stitch. Okay, so we're going to knit 1, 2, 3, okay, and then on the last stitch, so you really don't even have to count, but we're knitting to the end, and then we're going to knit front and then the back of that stitch. Okay, now we're going to flip again to the right side. Now this is where you might want to go ahead and put in a stitch marker to kind of keep up where you are, if you care which is the right side or wrong side. So I'm going to use a marker that can be opened at one end, and I'm just going to stick it on the front somewhere here so that I know this is my odd numbered side. Okay, so I know which part of the pattern I am on. Okay, so odds are the right side, even rows are the wrong side. So now I'm on the 5th row, and it wants me to knit front and back and knit 2 together. So we're going to knit front and back, and then we knit 2 together. So we're keeping our stitch count the same because we're increasing right in the front, and then we decrease immediately. So there's the knit 2 together, and then it says knit 2, which is actually could be written as knit to the end. And then we will repeat the same that we did on the wrong side rows, which is knit to the last stitch and then knit in front and back. So all the wrong side rows are actually going to be your increase. That's where your stitch count is going to get increased. And then all the right side rows are going to stay the same. Okay, so here we are, knit in front and back again. Knit front and back, and then we turn, and then we are on this right side row again, and we're on row 7. So we knit front and back, knit front and back, and then we knit 2 together. So these 2 stitches here are going to get knit together. Okay, and then we knit 3, or knit to the end, if you want to think about it that way. Okay, turn on the back side for row 8, and we're going to knit to the last stitch. Again, if you don't see the stitch marker, you know that you are knitting to the last stitch and then increasing. And there's my increase. Okay, coming back to right side, and my stitch marker came off, so I'm going to try that in a better spot this time. It's kind of fiddly when it's on the tip here. Okay, it's getting a lot of movement. All right, let's move on. We're on the 9th row here, and if it helps, you can, I like to use it on my iPad, and I can scroll in, and then I can know that the one at the bottom is actually where I need to be. So I'm going to knit front and back at the beginning of my right side rows, and then knit 2 together, and then we're going to knit to the end. And it's nice when they have it all written out like that, that we know that we have 4 stitches left, so it'll show you in the beginning like, hey, you're doing a good job, you've got the right stitch count going, way to go. Okay, so we're on the alternate row because it says 4th and alternate rows, knit to the last stitch, and then knit front and back. So repeat that again. Of course, you may be going a lot slower than I am or faster. That's okay. You can pause. You can actually slow down the controls on a laptop or desktop and with YouTube and let you slow it down. If you need these stitches any slower, I have more channels, more stitches on my channel in slow motion for the knit stitch. Okay, so now we're on to row 11, and we're going to knit in front and back, knit the front and the back, and then we're going to knit to the last 6 stitches. Now, if you read this wrong in the beginning, you may knit 6 and then go, oh, I'm out of stitches. So pay attention here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stitches. So technically you're just knitting 1 here. So knit to the last 6 stitches. So you've knit, and now there's 6 stitches left. Let's pay attention to the instructions here, and it says place marker. So this is where I'm grabbing the second marker and just slipping it on my my needle here. And then it says knit 2 together. So we're going to knit these 2 stitches together. Okay, and then we're going to knit the last 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, we've turned over to the back, and we've got a note that says, from this point on, keep marker in position before last 6 stitches. So what we're going to do is work this row here with the instructions, but I'm going to show you how to move this one over to keep it at the 6 when you need it for that other side. So if that's confusing, just follow along with the next 2 stitches here. So rows 12 and 13, if you'll go ahead and mark the time right now, and you'll know where to go back and forward to if you need help. This will continue to repeat after this, okay? And you'll keep this going until you get the length that you need. So we're going on the 12th row is knit to the last stitch. So we go knit, 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 okay, knit. And we want to go ahead and take this stitch marker off for a moment. Knit this, next stitch, and then place the stitch marker back on. Okay, so what I did is I had 5 because I had decreased before, and now I have 6. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches, so that when I'm on the other side, it will work out really nicely. So now I'm going to knit until I have the last stitch, which is this one, and I'm going to knit in the front and the back. Okay. This is just the same as all the other even rows, which is the wrong side rows. It's the same. You're just knitting until the end and knitting front and back. All we're doing here is just changing the placement of our marker. All right, let's turn over to the other side and continue. This is row 13. So you're going to knit in the front and back, just as you've been doing. Knit the front and back, and then we're going to knit to the last 6 stitches. So we're going to knit, so we're going all the way up into that marker. Pick the stitch marker up and put it on the other needle. You can transfer it like this if you've got a big enough stitch marker, or use your hands. And then we're going to, so it says slip the marker, knit 2 together, and then work the last 4 stitches. So knit 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we've got 5 stitches, and so on the other row, when we go back to row 12, we're going to slip that stitch over again. So let's do a row 12 again. We're going to repeat rows 12 and 13 until we have it to the right length. So we're going to knit to this last stitch, but I'm going to say knit until the stitch marker, pick up the stitch marker, knit 1 more stitch, and then place the marker again. And then work until the last stitch, and then increase with the knit front and back. Again, the row 13, which this could be any row later on, we're going to knit front and back again. And then work all the way to your stitch marker, and you'll slip the marker this time. Slip that marker, and then we're going to knit these 2 stitches together, and then knit until the end. That's it. All right, continue along. I'm gonna have another little video that shows me much further along and show you where to stop. I'll also show you how to add yarn. So we're gonna add yarn, and I'll show you how to know where to stop and how to bind off or cast off. All right, so pause your video and I'll meet you back later. Okay, I've come to the point in my pattern where I need to add on a ball of yarn. Now, I'd like to talk about these color changing yarns. These are long color changes, and so you have to make some decisions when it comes to adding on the ball of yarn. Now, as you can see, there are some places where you might see a little bit of color pop through, but most of it is these long color strands. Okay, so you can see I've got several of these going on. It's pretty well defined. So I'm coming to the end here, and I'm seeing where I'm going to come to this dark green color. Now my next ball that I have actually starts with this green, lime green, or chartreuse color here, and then I see that it goes into the green again. So I don't really want to go back and forth between the light and the dark green twice, because the rest of my pattern doesn't do that, right? So I'm going to make a decision. I'm at the end of my ball. This is all that I have left. So I'm actually going to take it and cut it here. Okay, and I'm actually going to cut it about halfway where this color transition is, and the reason why I'm doing that is because I have a few areas where it has a color pop of another color coming in, and that's okay with me, and I'm using as much of the yarn as I can. Now what will happen is I can use this later if I choose to, because if you look at my ball, if I start from the middle and work my way outward, it goes back to this green, light green again, and then to the dark green. And see, there's not much of it, right? So if I can add this into the end, it's perfect, and I get to use as much as I need. And I might need that for my bind off. All right, so let's add this in. We're going to turn this around. I'll start working on it. You can add in at any point. It doesn't have to be at the beginning of the row. In fact, I'm going to get a few more stitches in with this row as it is, and we're just going to work a couple of stitches, okay? And then I'm going to go through, and instead of wrapping around my old yarn, I'm just going to take this strand here, let that tail hang, which has some of that color changing in it, and then we're just going to wrap around with that and then continue. Okay, so I have just left my old strand down here, and I've just continued on knitting and working the new one. The new yarn strand is hanging at the back here, and well, I'll end up weaving in this tail and the other tail in the end, and it will completely be seamless, and you won't have any gaps or holes. So just continue knitting with your new yarn, and we'll meet you back at the end when you're ready to bind off. So how do you tell where to cast off? Well, this part of the pattern I want to discuss for a moment is where we are repeating 12th and 13th rows until the work across longer side edge measures 70 inches or 178 centimeters, and then we cast off. So the edge is actually going to be this longest side, which is from the corner down to the beginning corner. Okay, so the corner of where your live stitches are down to the beginning corner on the side that's the longest, not the live stitches. If you kept going and made the live stitches 70, it's going to be way bigger than what the pattern intended, which is okay. It's just whatever you want to do. So I've already measured mine, and say I'm at 55 when I measure from corner to corner. So I've done a little math. I want to show you how you can figure out how many more stitches or how many more rows you actually have left to work. So I've measured mine at 55, and my goal is 70 inches. So this is 55 inches measured, and then I have 15 inches left. So I've measured right here that I need 15 more inches left. Well, 15 divided by 3 is 5. So if I want to make it a more, instead of measuring along 15 inches and counting how many rows, I'm just going to measure 5 inches out and just start anywhere. I'm going to start right here and then go all the way down to where this 5 hits. So I'm going to count how many rows. I've got 2, 4, because every ridge counts 2 rows because you've got the purl and the knit. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, and then it stops. So I'm at 5 inches. So now I've got 5 inches, which is 20 rows, and then I'm going to do times 3 so I can get my 15 inches, and I've got 60 rows that are left to work. So I would work those 60 rows to get to 70 inches. Go ahead and finish yours until you get to the 70 inches or wherever you'd like to stop, and we'll bind off. Now you'll notice in my video, I'm actually going to go ahead and start binding off here, but that's because I'm going to make it for my daughter and I want it a little bit smaller. All right, I'll meet you back in a minute. Just pause your video and we'll see you when you're ready. Okay, we want to cast off. It's also called bind off. And we're going to knit the first 2 stitches. 1, 2. And then you're going to take this first stitch that you did and you're going to work it back over that second stitch. And that is 1 bound off stitch. Let's do that again. Knit the next stitch, okay? Because you've already worked that one that's on your right needle. Lift that back loop over the front loop, and that is bound off or cast off. So you're going to continue this way all the way across all your live stitches, and I'll meet you back at the very last stitch and show you how to finish your shawl. Okay, we're coming to the end of our cast off, and I've got a few more stitches left. If you did find that your stitches are a little too tight, you can always do the through the back loop stitch where you go through the back and then wrap around and then do your knitting over. So if you do find that your cast off was just a little too tight, then you could do that to make it a little bit more stretchy. It adds just a tiny bit of yarn into each stitch. Okay, so we're coming to the last stitch here. Knit over, bind that last stitch off, and then you're just going to pull it on through and clip your yarn. And you've got a tail, and we can get rid of our needles here. And you're going to want a blunt tapestry needle, a wide-eyed tapestry needle, and use this to weave in your ends. I'll go over that with you if you're not familiar. Okay, we pull this tight. Now before we begin, if you have a loose end stitch right here, you can actually kind of tighten that up a little bit and sort of tug on this part and see what pulls. I see that it's connected to here. Okay, so I'm going to kind of pull on that strand, and then I can find the other ends just by simply pulling it in. And what I'm doing is I'm actually sort of blocking it myself with my needle and get those stitches all pulled in nice and tight. So before I actually start weaving in my tail, I'm going to work on this. This doesn't always happen on me, but sometimes it does, and I want you to see what I do. Okay, so now that looks nice to me. So I'm going to continue weaving this in. Okay, so we're going to go in here into the stitch, and I'm going to go on the back side of this here, actually. I'm going to go back to the front, and I'm going to pull that part tight and see how that just cinches that right on in. It looks great on the back. Okay, and so now I'm just going to work my way down this ridge here, and we're just going to go up and over these little parts here. They look kind of like a an umbrella and a smile, so we're going to go through these and kind of follow the yarn along up through this umbrella here, and then we're going to go down. Let's see, no, I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to get to an area where it's a little less tight. So let me work up through here, this little smiley part, to get to an umbrella, and I'm going to go follow the yarn around here and down. And so it follows that stitch around, it masks it, right? And then I can go back around here, this smile. See how that follows that, right? And then we can go down through this area, follow this down, and see how that follows that in. And I'm going to go back up. So I can work that back in. I can actually go back through some of my other stitches or work my way up to the next row. So I'll work my way back up here and go around here. And I'm working it slowly into the side here, yeah. And so that's how I get my stitches all nice and lined up, and you can't see where they're hiding. So see how that works. And then when I'm ready, I'll just go ahead and clip it, and then you can't see it woven in at all. It's completely undetectable. So you'll weave in the rest of your tails that way, so where you get your two ends, and then wherever you had your extra yarn woven in for the second ball, and you're done. I hope you've enjoyed knitting your triangle shawl today. Please tag us on social media with the photo of what you made. On behalf of Yarnspirations and Good Knit Kisses, I'm your host, Kristen, wishing you happy knitting.